I love Atlus. It is one of, if not my favorite gaming company. I liked Persona 5 and was left breathless with Persona 3 and 4. I've been eyeing Metaphor ever since its announcement, although I haven't really found the time to get my hands on it. I've heard really good things about Catherine and 13 Sentinels, and would like to play them if I get the chance. Now, you might be thinking, ain't he just another Persona fan who hasn't played anything else? And well, first of all, rude, and second of all, you're actually wrong. See, almost 2 years ago, I got Shin Megami Tensei 5 as a birthday gift. I was quite excited to finally get into SMT and leave behind the days of yore, where I was a lowly Persona fan peasant. Knowing next to nothing before I started playing, I booted up my Switch and I indulged on what this game had to offer. After some time, credits rolled, and man, it was truly a horrendous game. Just kidding, of course. SMT5 wasn't the worst game I've ever played. It was actually kind of fun at times. But it still had some major issues, mainly in the plot department. As someone who adores RPGs, especially because of their story, getting to experience a tale with such stale characters and bland narrative was, honestly, kind of impressive. Never had I wanted to skip a game's endgame cutscenes at all, and let me tell you, I survived Tales of Celia. While it is true that the gameplay mechanics were fun and I did enjoy most of my time with it, I was left confused. Confused as to what was all the fuss about Shin Megami Tensei if this was what Atlus had to offer, even after the game took 5 years to develop. I just don't get how... Huh? Oh, hey, but would you look at that? SMT5 Vengeance was just announced. Well, I sure don't mind the DLC that might even fix some of the issues I had with... Huh? What? It's not DLC? This bitch is a re-release? Okay, we're throwing hands with this one, boys. Atlus had the gall to re-release an incomplete, mediocre game, only to re-release it mere 3 years after the original. In the same console? Oh well, bummer, you know? I guess it's the same game with some minor tweaks here and there, and it's probably not even going to sell that well to begin with. I call bullshit. I know Atlus did the exact same thing with Persona 5 Vanilla and Royale, however, there is one key difference. Persona 5's original release was a complete game. Royale improved and added new content, but at its core, Persona 5 was always a full picture. SMT5 was not. I'm not trying to say that there is nothing wrong with Persona 5's case. Of course, it still is a douchebag move to sell Royale as an entirely different product and not an expansion to the original. What I am trying to say is that that specific tactic is not good, especially if the original game was lacking to begin with. Those two games should have been treated as DLC. And if you try to argue that Royale and Vengeance have too much content for it to be DLC, there's new dungeons, new side quests, new characters, and a lot of extra content, it deserves to be its own game. Well then, let me just remind you that back in 07, Persona 3 FES released in Japan as an append-disc that required the original to work. In other words, DLC before DLC. FES introduced a new social link, combat tweaks, new personas, Elizabeth dates, and most importantly, a new 20+ hour epilogue. All of that extra content in less than a year since the original release. If they could do that more than 15 years ago, they could have made Royale and Vengeance a DLC expansion, and I frankly believe them not doing that is a problem. As they are separate games, that means that to get to experience all the new things they have to offer, not only do I need to spend the same amount of money I already spent on the original, but it's also a matter of time. It's no secret that most Megaton titles are not particularly short. This means that all of that new content needs dozens of hours just to get the chance of getting unlocked. As DLC, you could integrate the new additions to an already existing file, or better yet, a New Game Plus file, especially taking into account how high the replay value of these games is. It'd be great if Atlus started using more DLC on their games, so that they can better implement all of... Huh? Oh, are they already using DLC? Oh, well, then maybe all I just said is already being... What in the mobile game microtransaction is this? This is insane! Wait, are these also day 1 DLC packs? Okay. So, in case anyone needs a reminder, Mitama enemies give you a lot of experience or money. This also means they are rather rare. So, in case you want to farm enemies to get mecha for better equipment or to level up faster, well, instead of it being easy or having a side quest that rewards you with an easier way to grind, you can just pay. As if this was a run-of-the-mill mobile game. It is lazy to lock a quality of life improvement behind a paywall. Hear that, amiibos? I know there are a lot of people who actually support these practices. I don't really understand why though, so I decided to investigate. While researching, I stumbled upon an interesting Forbes article written all the way back in 2012. I found the article more interesting due to its old age, taking into account that DLC was way more controversial back then. In it, the author not only tries to defend Day 1 DLC and locked on disc content, but also thinks of it as a good practice that more games should implement. Let us try and see what wisdom does this man have to offer. It's never a bad idea to understand how the other side of the coin is, after all. The problem is, I don't care. I don't care what's on the little plastic disc I buy at the store, nor do I care when it was made. I don't care what each developer was doing on any given day of the cycle. I don't care when the game was finished. The physical disc is not what's important to me. What's important to me is that anything I pay $60 for should be worth $60. That's it. If you think that the developer has unfairly locked its content away on the disc, the heart of the problem is that you don't think that the available product is worth $60. In that case, don't buy it. Or wait for a sale. That's how consumer choices work. Whew boy. A real piece of work, ain't it? Jokes aside though, let us actually take Thier's point at face value. I do believe that what he says makes sense. If we are to understand video games as an industry and as a product that is meant to generate revenue for companies. And it is undeniable that Atlus is indeed a company that has to make some money in order to stay afloat. However, that point of view is leaving behind one of the most important aspects of what makes video games what they are: art. The reason why SMT5's re-release and the Mitama DLC packs bother me so much is not that Atlus is maximizing the revenue or that I feel robbed. At the end of the day, it's that it feels as if Atlus themselves don't see their games as art, but as a means to get that dollar. Even if we are to assume that re-releasing the games is cheaper, which I'm pretty sure it isn't, that doesn't explain the microtransaction type DLCs. As Atlus insists on integrating DLC like this to their business model, they are actively damaging the relationship with their customers. I, for one, refused to buy Vengeance, because I don't feel like Atlus respected my own time and money with the first one, if the idea was just to fix it and resell it a little later on. In other words, shameless market tactics such as these may result in less units sold, which is the same as less profit in the long run. Many people online are hesitant to buy recent Atlus games because they have no guarantee that there will not be a re-release 2 or less years from now. Meaning, again, less units sold, less profit. It is irrational, no matter how you put it, to keep this business model. More money now doesn't always translate to more money later on. As I was writing this script, the Game Awards happened. By the end of the show, the director of Baldur's Gate 3, Vincke, came up on stage and gave a short speech before revealing Game of the Year. I was surprised, as what he had to say was oddly fitting to what I'm trying to convey with this video. He talked about a flawless formula for a studio to win Game of the Year, and that it's stupidly simple. The studio just needed to create a game for the sake of making a good game. They didn't make it to increase market share.
They didn't make it to serve as a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets. And furthermore, the people in charge forbade them from cramming the game with anything whose only purpose was to increase revenue and didn't serve the game design. They didn't treat their developers like numbers on a spreadsheet. They didn't treat their players as users to exploit. And they didn't make decisions they knew were short-sighted and function of a bonus or politics. They knew that if you put the game and the team first, the revenue will follow. They were driven by idealism and wanted players to have fun. And they realized that if the developers didn't have fun, nobody was going to have any fun. They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game because they loved games.
It's really that simple. All of what he spoke of that night is incredibly relevant for the video game industry, but the main takeaway I want for this video is that DLC shouldn't be perceived as a money-making machine, but rather as a way to improve an existing work, taking care of problems the base game had and reinforcing its message. The Champion's Ballad, Cinder Shadows, Future Redeemed, and hell, even Episode I Guess are all DLCs that I genuinely believe get the idea behind what they should be. And I am only referring to those specific DLC waves, them being bundled with other 3 waves and only being sold as said bundle is not getting the point. But it is still better than what we're dealing with SMT5. Thankfully, it does seem like they will be distancing themselves from re-releasing their titles just a few years after release. I mean, even Pokemon stopped doing that shit long ago. Wada stated separate times last year that there are no plans for a Persona 3 Reload re-release, and that if there's new content that doesn't significantly expand on the base game, then they'd like to deliver that content as DLC rather than a completely different game. I wanna reiterate, I love Atlus, but they can be real assholes when it comes to toxic business tactics. They are no EA, but that doesn't necessarily make them the good guys. Even still, I hope that, eventually, they'll realize that Vincke's words ring true, as well as any other studio out there. Video games as an artistic medium are still in their infancy years. The only way that games can achieve their full potential is if their developers realize that fact and work passionately towards that goal. I wonder then, if video games do manage to achieve enlightenment, what will the limits of their immersion be? What worlds may come to life in such a reality? What beauty may lie beyond them? I will wait until that day arrives, because surely it will arrive.
Thank you for watching.